so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And I want to take you through a very quick journey through the world of social entrepreneurship and change making, and just give you a couple of impressions from that world. So come with me on a little trip. Before we start, I want to tell you a little story. And I want you to imagine a young boy, 6 years old, sitting in front of his house, the house of his parents in Copenhagen in Denmark. And he has in his hand a pen and a paper, nothing else, no computer, no phone, no nothing. And he starts to draw. And what he's drawing, and this is an actual copy of this picture because what I'm telling you is a true story, he starts to draw this picture you see here on the screen. Now, his father comes out and looks at this picture and obviously is a bit surprised. My son, why are you drawing a picture like this? And they go back into the house and they have dinner, and suddenly the father remembers something. He runs out of the house, opens the side of the car and grabs a heavy car map of Europe. He opens the first page and this is what he sees. And if you compare these two pictures, it's a one-on-one exact copy of this first page of this car map. Now, they remembered that 3 months before this incident, they were going on a trip through Europe and the son was studying this map. And he actually remembered it one by one and point by point and square by square. It's 100% accurate copy because this young boy has autism, a special form of autism called Asperger's syndrome. And it is looked upon as something, these are the boy and his father. On the right, you see Torkil Sonne, a social entrepreneur. This is looked at as something weak in our society, a disability, a weakness, a stigma. But Torkil didn't want to accept that and turned it into a magical strength. He created Specialistern, which is a global social enterprise that trains young people with Asperger's syndrome to become specialists in tech companies. For Microsoft, for SAP, they work at Google and at many places around the world because they have a special talent. They can remember numbers very well. They're very detailed focused. They like to focus and they're ideal employees in tech companies. And so Torkil became a social entrepreneur in helping his son and helping many, many thousands and tens of thousands of young people around the world discover that their weakness is actually a strength. Now, what is a social entrepreneur? It is basically a combination between someone who wants to solve a pressing societal challenge, but has an entrepreneurial mindset. People who usually want to transform markets and create new products and services. It is that magical space in between, or like I want to sometimes put it, the mix between Mahatma Gandhi and Steve Jobs. People that have both a big, big desire to make a big positive difference in the world, but they also have the mindset of an entrepreneur. They don't want to stop in their neighborhood or in their city. They want to grow. They want to grow the impact that they're having. They want to really disrupt the system that creates the problem that they're addressing. They're a combination of an activist and an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, and they've been around forever. This is nothing new. It's not a trend. There's been people like that in the world since many, many, many years. This is Maria Montessori, who in 1906 invented the kindergarten. Before her, there was no place for children to go and learn. She invented the idea and the concept of kindergartens in Rome, the first one called the Casa dei Bambini in Rome, or Florence Nightingale, who invented nursing. Before Florence Nightingale, when you went to a hospital, you did not get proper care. You get maybe a surgeon or a doctor to operate you, but nobody to take care of you after. And many people died of their wounds and infections. And she said, this has to be done different. And in my eyes, she's one of the greatest social entrepreneurs in the world. And there's many of them. And I give you some quick examples. This is a venture from Mozambique originally, where, believe it or not, they are training African rats to detect landmines, because rats have a very, very good sense of smell, better than that of dogs. And they can be trained to sniff out landmines to then take them out. And thanks to hero rats, Mozambique is now completely landmine free, and so are many other crisis regions in the world. This is Simon Berry, who invented Cola Life. And what he does is he is filling the empty spots in Coca-Cola cartons that travel everywhere in the world, even to the most remote villages. And he's filling them with life-saving diarrhea medicine for young children and saving thousands and tens of thousands of lives through this very simple but brilliant innovation of using an existing infrastructure to bring medicine to people who can otherwise not reach it. This is an example from Germany, Discovering Hands. A former doctor actually discovered that blind women, because of their special senses, can detect anomalies in the women's chest and can help to discover breast cancer at a stage where normal doctors wouldn't even feel a difference in the women's breast tissue. But blind women can, and again, a weakness or something that is perceived as a weakness, blindness, is turned into a wonderful strength and a wonderful impact for the world. But, and you might have realized, these are all very established social entrepreneurs, mostly in their adult years. Everyone can be a change maker, and I want to bring you some examples. This is Milena Glimbowski, who at the age of 22 started Germany's completely package-free first supermarket, where you go inside and you will find no packaging materials, nothing wrapped in plastic. It's a supermarket where you can get anything, even detergent, pasta, cleaning products, anything that you may need and may find in a normal supermarket, but package-free. And she's really created a movement of package-free, zero-waste supermarkets in Germany and across Europe. And she started that, you know, at the time when she was still studying at the age of 22. This is Lefteris Arapakis from Greece, and he deeply cares about the Mediterranean Sea. We all know it's now more full of waste and plastic than it is of fish, which is a horrible crisis for our sea ecosystems. And what he came up with is to train fishermen that are struggling financially and that are struggling to find enough fish to make their fishing economically sustainable, training them to actually take the plastic out of the oceans. And he's creating a cycle where fishermen get an additional income by doing this work, but also clean the oceans, which in return brings back the fish population to their fishing grounds, creating a really magical circle of taking out the plastic of the oceans, but also helping to renew fish stock and livestock in the Mediterranean Sea. This is an example, again, from Germany, Jonathan Funke, who at a very early age, again, 19 or 20, created TipMe, which is a social venture that allows you to give a tip to the person who is creating your shoes and your t-shirts, because he's working with the companies that produce your textiles and your shoes in the countries where they're being made. And he can connect you to the people who have created your t-shirt. And you can then help support them and give them a tip, be in contact with them, be in touch with them, and make the whole production chain of global fashion more sustainable and more human. This is Vera Günther, who created Mimicry, And what she's doing is to create high-end fashion items out of the plastic rubber of refugee boats of people who have to unfortunately cross the Mediterranean Sea. And this might sound like a crazy idea to you at first, but it is also raising huge awareness on the migration and the lives of migrants, as well as generating income for a lot of campaigns that she's running, for her lobbying work that she's doing to raise awareness of the situation of refugees and in order to improve their lives. Again, very young age, she started that out of her frustration with the migration policies and the situation that many refugees were in Europe. I want to just quickly share with you what we do in our work at the moment, which is a community called the Changemaker Exchange. And it came from realizing something that all these young change makers share. They're sharing, unfortunately, challenges, which is number one, a lack of like-minded peers, of friends that support them, a lack of support, a lack of financial security. They're all struggling a little with self-care and burnout and well-being because they work so hard on their issues. And they're also not being able to finding partners that they can collaborate with and co-create with. And that's why we created the Changemaker Exchange community, which provides young change makers around the world with safe, supportive, fun and empowering spaces where they can connect, where they can learn from each other, where they can create collaborations so that they can create and sustain and scale their positive change. This has now grown to a community of almost 1,000 young next generation social entrepreneurs around the world, in Latin America, in Africa, in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia, of young people aged 18 to 35 that are doing just absolutely amazing work to create a positive impact for society and for the environment. And now to just close this short journey through the world of social entrepreneurship, I want to share with you a couple of things that I believe can be a starting point for your own journey into this world and for your own journey as a social entrepreneur and as a change maker. And the first one that I want to share with you is very simple. It is one book that has left me deeply inspired and has done the same for many of my former colleagues at Ashoka and for many of my friends and people that I work with, which is called How to Change the World by David Bornstein. And if you can read one book, read this one, and it will really open your eyes for the potential and the wonderful world of social entrepreneurship. If you are looking to get into this world and you don't really know how, this is a selection of organizations that I believe do wonderful work. And maybe you can screenshot this, or I can share the presentation with the organizing team and they can share this with you later. But each one of those is a really great starting point to learn about their offers and the activities that they run. Last but not least, we at Changemaker Exchange also have a lot of resources for you. If you go to our website at changemakerexchange.org, you will find a lot of toolkits and, for example, a handbook on how to run sustainable events, how to get into this world, how to become a change maker. And I wish you a lot of fun studying these and visiting our site and surfing around and checking out the examples. I want to leave you and wrap this up with a question, and we don't have the time to do this exercise right now, but if you are at a point in your life where you are feeling this urge of creating something and becoming active and becoming a change maker yourself, I think one very simple reflection that you can do in order to just get started is to really think of two things. Number one, what is something that deeply touches you, that is a problem that you see in the world and that you really care about? And number two, what is something that you are really good at and that you have a really big and deep passion for? And just think of these two things and try and combine them in your mind, and you will see that this is usually a really great point for starting with ideas, and that will give you a lot of inspiration, and maybe your imagination will open up for what you could do in the world, because that combination between something you care about and something you are deeply passionate for is usually a really, really great point to start from. So thank you for your time. I hope this was giving you a bit of inspiration, a bit of insights into the world of social entrepreneurship. And I'm happy to take your questions and engage with you a little further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthias. It was, yes, indeed, a very inspiring presentation. And so I, of course, have questions, and I would like to encourage the audience that if you would like to ask from Matthias, well, you can ask with the video and sound on as well. You can ask in Hungarian in the chat as well, and we will translate it. So it's up to you, whichever you choose. But I have the privilege to ask you the first question, and that's so we have, as you said, I imagine you have followed the career of more than 1,000 social entrepreneurs with the Changemaker Exchange movement and or community and the Ashoka community. And I am sure now you have a secret formula of how someone can become a successful social entrepreneur.
Thank you for the question. And I think it is actually easier than you think, because I believe that the key step to take is to take the first step. And I know this sounds maybe too simple as a recipe, but it really is. At the end of the day, the world around us is being created by people. What is reality? It is the manifestation of ideas and things that people around you have thought about and have created. So you can be a part of that too. And it's just important to start and to try and to look for people who want to maybe join you and support you. And then I guarantee you that there is many, many networks out there, including the ones that I showed in my presentation, that can help you along the way and can help you how to write a good concept and how to find the financial support that you need to make your idea become a reality, that can help you with tips and tricks. But that first step, it needs to come from inside of you. And a good place to start is thinking about what you care about and what you're passionate about. And maybe that will give you some inspiration for what you could do. Another thing is join others, get started, volunteer, become part of initiatives that you really care about. 12 years ago, I started my work with Ashoka as a volunteer. I was just really curious about their work, and I raised my hand and I said, hey, can I help you? Can I become a part of it? And,
so
a year later.
That was your first step?
In my own social innovation journey, I've done many things before at high school and at university and joined different initiatives, but sort of that world of social entrepreneurship, my first step was, yes, lifting my hand and saying, hello, here I am. How can I help? How can I be a part of your wonderful work? And everything else followed from that.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is the biggest challenge of social entrepreneurs nowadays?
There is many, but I can give you really good data because we have just finished a huge global survey among 1,000 young change makers across the world from 130 different countries. And the number one challenge, and I find that deeply frustrating, I have to say, is the lack of financial support. A lot of them don't manage to compensate, to pay themselves for their work. So it is very hard to find the money. And I find that really unjust because they're creating huge value and impact for the world. but they struggle financially. And another thing is that many of them struggle with well-being, self-care, mental health, because they're getting too consumed, they're getting too much involved into the problems that they try to tackle. And so financial challenges, as well as work-life balance, self-care, mental health, well-being, those are two really, really big issues that people struggle with. And we all as society have to do something about it, and support change makers that make the world better. Yeah.
Yeah. The first challenge that you mentioned, the financial aspect of being a social entrepreneur, is very often I hear this question is like, can you sustain yourself? Can you earn enough as a social entrepreneur? Because of course it's important when you start your career. So I'm usually positive on this, and I say yes, of course. But how do you see it? What could be a solution, or what could be many solutions to actually have your the bank account being balanced?
Yeah, I think the first step is a mental step, which is that if you do amazing work for the world, you deserve to be paid. I meet a lot of change makers and social entrepreneurs that for many, many years kind of hesitate to say that this is work that they should be paid for. So it starts within yourself as a first step. And then I think it gets better these days with a lot of foundations and governments and big funds giving more and more financial support to social entrepreneurs. And also, if you are a social entrepreneur who creates a product or a service that can be sold, not all social entrepreneurs are generating income. Many of them are non-profit social entrepreneurs, but those that have a product or service that creates an income, I think the markets for social enterprises, they're really growing these days. Every third company in Germany at the moment that is being founded is a social enterprise. So the movement it's happening. It's not stoppable anymore, and I think it's going to become more and more standard. So I'm hopeful that the money is there. We just need to get it.
And if I'm not mistaken, you are also a small-scale impact investor.
Yeah, very, very small
very,
scale.
Very small.
Yeah, I really care about the issue of the climate crisis. And
so that's your cause.
Yeah, that's the cause. And what I try to do is to find small social ventures that have very innovative ideas to address that challenge. I can give you one example, and they're very, very successful, and I'm contributing a tiny part to this, but I'm posting it in the chat. This to me is one of the greatest social enterprises at the moment, tackling renewable energies. And it is now the biggest social enterprise crowdfunding and crowd investing project, I think, in Europe. They've raised 3.5 million euro for their work, and they're building solar containers in rural Africa to electrify rural villages in a sustainable solar-powered way. And this would be kind of the projects that I'd be looking for to make a small contribution. Yeah.
And when you decide to choose these projects, or actually this one, what are you looking for in your future investments? Like, what's your best advice to someone who's running for an impact investor?
Yeah, it's always about the people. I think at the end of the day, technology can be outsourced. It's not the idea, it's the execution, it's the dedication of the team. So to convince people to give you money, you probably have to really show them that, yes, it needs to be an innovative idea and you need to show impact. But even more important, you need to show them that you are in it for the long term. You're really committed. This is not just a project, but it is somehow your life that you're dedicating to this, to solving a challenge. And then assembly a good team of people that that other people can believe in. And so, yeah, I think just making sure that you give people that confidence that they can believe in you and believe in you as a person and believe in you as a team. That to me is the most important thing.
We've got a question from the chat. Are there any examples of social enterprises on the verge of mental health and art, like using therapy or technology?
I would have to lie if I give you a spontaneous example, but Bertram, I think that is.
Yeah.
What I can do is to recommend you to go to changemakerexchange.org/changemakers, where you will find a whole database from around the world of exciting examples and social ventures. And you can actually type in different search prompts. I've just did it myself, actually, as we speak. I said mental health, and there is a couple ventures already already coming up that yeah, could be interesting. So for example, Marcela de Anda from Latin America, she's using video therapy to treat mental health issues. She comes up as one of the examples, and many others. So if okay for you, I would recommend you you check out that database. I don't want to say anything wrong here. So yeah.
Okay, we'll also post this link in the chat. So yeah, okay. And one more question: what does it take to become a change maker at Changemaker Exchange?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So quick advertising. We're always accepting new change makers into the community in the same way, and that is through summits that we're hosting. They typically take 4 to 5 days that you apply for, attend the summit, and by going through this experience, you are becoming a member of the Changemaker Exchange community. We have just finished the first round of summits for the first half of the year, but we are going to announce new summits soon to take place end of this year. So please look out for any opportunity there. And if you run a little initiative, if you have your own project, I encourage you to apply and become a part of the community. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now back to a little bit of talking about young change makers or aspiring wannabe change makers. So what would be your advice to your 10-year younger self?
I really like my 10-year younger self. I think I was a boy, thanks to my parents and my upbringing, that was really open to the wonders of the world. I was really curious. I wanted to learn a lot. I wanted to travel. I wanted to use any opportunity that I was given. And I think that's something I would say. I would encourage that little boy to keep going and keep looking and keep searching and keep being open and keep being excited and inspired by the world. I'm really excited about, you know, I don't want to downplay all the challenges that we face, especially in these dreadful pandemic times. But on a more philosophical level, I'm really just, yeah, I admire life and the world and what's out there and all the things we can discover. And, you know, me being in this call with you all and coming from all over the place and speaking to each other and connecting. So yeah, keep that excitement, keep realizing that life is a miracle, and I think that's a good step. Yeah.
And read the book of How to Change the World. Right.
That definitely, yeah. That's some. I think the New York Times once called it the Bible of social entrepreneurship or something like that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. As you mentioned the pandemic, what do you see? How did this whole pandemic affect the social entrepreneurs community?
Yeah, quoting data from the same study that I was just mentioning, it's actually quite inspiring to see that almost none of the social entrepreneurs have stopped their activities. But what many have done is to adapt their activities to the new context, which means either shifting their mission towards helping people in need due to the crisis, or bringing their offering online because they can't meet in person anymore. So all that I've seen beyond, yes, struggles financially, burden on people's mental health, we're all tired, including myself. It's not an easy time for the world, but we've seen a lot of creativity, resilience from social entrepreneurs around the world. Yeah, and I can actually recommend you something again in the chat. This is an initiative currently run by Ashoka called Changemakers United, which features and brings together the work of I think nearly 100 social entrepreneurs from around the world that tackle the COVID-19 crisis. Yeah.
Okay, sounds exciting. Yeah, Aggie's asking. Yes, you'll receive the link to the video so you can finish this chat. Okay, ciao, Aggie. And with this, I would like to open the floor for questions. So if anyone has questions, now is the time. And I got one on the chat. So Matthias, what's your background? Like, what did you study? Which university, or yeah, what do you have an official paper from?
So I did go to university and I studied communication science, which is a bit of a mix of public relations, political science, macroeconomic studies, etc. Much more important than my studies, though, is that I've always been very involved in activities outside university. I would say I went to university for 5 years, but 70% of the time I was part of initiatives, volunteering, working on the side, getting involved, meeting people, and 40% studying, 30-40% of the time studying. I really don't think being an entrepreneur and a change maker, yes, it depends on maybe landing a corporate job or for some financial security. I'm not encouraging anyone to quit their studies or to not study. That's really not my message. But in order to become a change maker or an entrepreneur, it's more an attitude. It's this get-go attitude and ambition and wanting to do things and willpower. So even if you do not study or have not studied, I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a big disadvantage in becoming an entrepreneur. Yeah.
And there are so many free tools on the internet, on Changemaker Exchange, on the Ashoka page as well, that you can use to catch up with. Okay. Again, if there are questions just from the audience, just let us know. Okay. There's one. Is there any recommendation for documentaries, for movies that you like and you think it could be important to watch?
Yeah. There's one. I'm trying to remember the name. Joel, do you know how there's this movie about Ashoka Fellows, how to change the world? Or, I mean, generally, I'm afraid to say there isn't that many really good movies on social entrepreneurship and social innovation. They're usually a bit more on movements and social change in general, etc. So I'm afraid I cannot really give a good recommendation. But again, all the resources that I've shared, if you go to the websites of all these organizations, they usually all have a section that says tips, resources, media, including Ashoka, by the way. If you go to ashoka.org, there's a big section that recommends newspapers to read and films to watch and books to read. So I would probably recommend to do that. Yeah.
I was going to suggest the same. I know for a fact that on Ashoka's website there is short videos, quite a few. And a little bit earlier, I put in the website. It's a searchable database as well of fellows on the Ashoka Global website. So I think there is a lot of information there and great resources.
Okay, thank you, Joel and Matthias. And I would say one more question. Yeah, we have been living in a very difficult time. What was your motivation, or what is still, I would say, what is still your source of motivation that gets you out of bed, Matthias?
Yeah, thank you. Well, lately I had more difficulties than usual getting out of bed very motivated, I have to say. The pandemic is definitely having an effect even on the most positive thinkers. And I'm generally very positive about the world. But I think fundamentally it is just being amazed by the world and wanting to make sure that it stays amazing and that I do my part to contributing to the beauty and to all the good that is in the world. So I think deep down it comes from a place of loving life, loving the world, loving other people, and wanting to contribute. Therefore, it's almost like in a loving relationship, giving feels like taking, becomes giving, becomes taking, and becomes the same thing. And I think if you have that relationship to life in the world, then you cannot live without being a contributing part to it all. So I would say deep down, that's my driver. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matthias, for being with us today. There is another question. Do you have any advice for young people who never thought about social entrepreneurship? How can one promote the social entrepreneurship spirit?
Yeah, thank you, Fabrice, for the question. And I think I would give the same answer as before, that first it is about starting and inspiring people to take that first step. And then really, there's a lot of organizations that do really good work. And remember the list that I've shared, is to just look for these resources, look what they have to offer, see what fits you and fits your friends and your community, etc., etc. And yeah, just get started, and you will see that then there is a lot of people that want to help. There's a lot of support networks, and some of the addresses we shared on this call. And if you start researching with those, you will find others. It's like a journey. Like I said at the beginning, it's a journey you're taking. The first step you have to do.
Okay, there is one more from Bertram. Social entrepreneurship, combining a cause with a passion, is a creative activity which is impossible without mastery. For example, skills that are considered soft skills, as being super organized, being a good project manager, is also a skill to build a business on. Yeah. In relation to creative thinking, what traits describe best the mindset, attitude of social entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so creativity, definitely. I think ethical integrity, having a really good sense of what is moral and ethical to do. is something I see in a lot of social entrepreneurs. In entrepreneurs generally, I see a great talent and skill in thinking big. You can do a project in your neighborhood, and that's usually a great start. But what entrepreneurs are really good at is imagining a world where what they do would happen everywhere. And that is sort of becoming almost like a force that pulls them. So, oh, what I'm doing here creates great impact for the world. How would the world look like if this happened everywhere? And then things start to shift and you start to think different and build different teams and get different resources. So creativity, ethical integrity, the ability to think big, the ability to say no to certain things, to focus, is one that is really important. We're all busy, we're all distracted, but social entrepreneurs, they have their eye on the impact goal. Those are some that I would share here. Yeah.
Talking about keeping the focus is, I mean, it's very difficult, and I guess many of us face the challenges of this. Do you have any methodology that you use when you feel like I'm losing the focus?
Yeah, we actually have something we call a decision radar in our team, where we have spent quite a bit of time defining what is most important to us, which is that anything that we do has to be contributing to our mission. Everything that we do has to be in some way financially sustainable. Everything we do, we have to actually have capacity and time for it. Everything we do has to be with partners that we fully trust. And so usually when somebody comes and says, hey, I have this idea and we should do project ABC, we sit down and we assess according to these criteria whether it is really something that we should be doing. So just the other day, we got a request to host a training and it would have been quite well paid, etc. But we didn't really know the partner. It wasn't really aligned to our mission and our vision. And we turned it down because we felt it was a distraction from what we're trying to do. So just lists, criteria, awareness helps. I mean, it's easy to say, stay focused, be able to say no, etc. But on the basis of what? So I always feel like really writing it down, what you care for the most, helps you to make better decisions when the time has come to decide between A and B, to rely on something. That's at least the way that we approach this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And there is another question. What is the idea behind focusing on individuals when building this social entrepreneur community? Is there any kind of support for changemaker groups or teams?
Yeah, great question. We actually do, we're very open to 2 or 3 team members applying at the same time. We have quite a lot of changemakers in our community that are from the same team and organization. And we also really promote the idea of collaborating and not necessarily always doing your own thing, but to share resources and to collaborate. So I think that is slightly shifting these days, and more people realize it's the entrepreneur, the founders, they're important. And I think there is a place for supporting individuals, but it's equally important to look at the teams. And it's been like that from the beginning, but we're slowly shifting towards doing that even more and looking at teams rather than individual changemakers. So great question. Thank you. Yeah.
I know I've said it now several times, that last question. But yeah, I have a last question. So if you had all the money and time and resources in the world, what would you do with it?
Yeah, I would probably start a global campaign to really sue and go after the 100 biggest environmental polluters in the world. And I don't mean this, that all the people that work for such companies are bad, not at all. It's the system that is the problem. But if you look at the climate emergency and CO2 emissions, we can all do our part and become vegan and drive less cars and save energy, etc. But at the end of the day, the large majority of carbon emissions and environmental destructions is actually coming from a small number of very powerful fossil fuel companies and big corporations. And I think one way to go about this would be to really make sure that they have to change. So anything that would support that, I think, is a good investment in our future. Yeah.
So if anyone from our audience has any idea on how to start it, just we will link you up.
Yeah, actually, maybe a final message. This just happened today here in Germany. News from Berlin, where the Fridays for Future Youth, which is high school students, 16, 17, 18-year-old teenagers who lobby for better environmental policies. They've achieved, they've sued the German government to implement better environmental policies, and the highest court in Germany, the Constitutional Court, has actually given them, has sided in their favor, and the German government now has to, by law, make stronger environmental policies and change the law towards the protection of the environment. So nobody's too small, too young to create big change. This is a historic decision that happened today, where it's been really young but very dedicated people that came together, and it became millions of them that are now suing governments and lobbying for change, and so nothing is impossible in today's world.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Matthias, for being with us here today and sharing all these exciting examples and tools and everything. So really, thank you. And